"Let us go, sir," said Marmeladov all at once, raising his head and addressing Raskolnikov. "Come along with me. Kozel's house, looking into the yard. I'm going to Katerina Ivanovna. Time I did." Raskolnikov had for some time been wanting to go, and he had meant to help him. Marmeladov was much unsteadier on his legs than in his speech, and leaned heavily on the young man. They had 200 or 300 paces to go. The drunken man was more and more overcome by dismay and confusion as they drew nearer the house. "It's not Katerina Ivanovna I am afraid of now," he muttered in agitation, "and that she will begin pulling my hair. What does my hair matter? Bother my hair! That's what I say. Indeed, it will be better if she does begin pulling it. That's not what I'm afraid of. It's her eyes I'm afraid of. Yes, her eyes. The red on her cheeks, too, frightens me, and her breathing, too. Have you noticed how people in that disease breathe, when they are excited? I am frightened of the children's crying, too. For if Sonia has not taken them food, I don't know what's happened. I don't know. But blows I'm not afraid of. No, sir, that such blows are not a pain to me, but even an enjoyment. In fact, I can't get on without it. It's better so. Let her strike me. It relieves her heart. It's better so. There's the house of Kozel, the cabinet maker. A German, well-to-do. Lead the way." They went in from the yard and up to the 4th story. The staircase got darker and darker as they went up. It was nearly 11 o'clock, and although in summer in Petersburg there is no real night, yet it was quite dark at the top of the stairs. A grimy little door at the very top of the stairs stood ajar. A very poor-looking room about 10 paces long was lighted up by a candle end. The whole of it was visible from the entrance. It was all in disorder, littered up with rags of all sorts, especially children's garments. Across the farthest corner was stretched a ragged sheet. Behind it probably was the bed. There was nothing in the room except 2 chairs and a sofa covered with American leather, full of holes, before which stood an old deal kitchen table, unpainted and uncovered. At the edge of the table stood a smoldering tallow candle in an iron candlestick. It appeared that the family had a room to themselves, not part of a room, but their room was practically a passage. The door leading to the other rooms, or rather cupboards, into which Amalia Lipovexel's flat was divided, stood half open, and there was shouting, uproar, and laughter within. People seemed to be playing cards and drinking tea there. Words of the most unceremonious kind flew out from time to time. Raskolnikov recognized Katerina Ivanovna at once. She was a rather tall, slim, and graceful woman, terribly emaciated, with magnificent dark brown hair and with a hectic flush in her cheeks. She was pacing up and down in her little room, pressing her hands against her chest. Her lips were parched, and her breathing came in nervous, broken gasps. Her eyes glittered as in fever and looked about with a harsh, immovable stare. And that consumptive and excited face with the last flickering light of the candle end playing upon it made a sickening impression. She seemed to Raskolnikov about 30 years old, and was certainly a strange wife for Marmeladov. She had not heard them, and did not notice them coming in. She seemed to be lost in thought, hearing and seeing nothing. The room was close, but she had not opened the window. A stench rose from the staircase, but the door onto the stairs was not closed. From the inner rooms clouds of tobacco smoke floated in. She kept coughing, but did not close the door. The youngest child, a girl of 6, was asleep, sitting curled up on the floor with her head on the sofa. A boy a year older stood crying and shaking in the corner. Probably he had just had a beating. Beside him stood a girl of 9 years old, tall and thin, wearing a thin and ragged chemise with an ancient cashmere pelisse hung over her bare shoulders, long outgrown and barely reaching her knees. Her arm, as thin as a stick, was round her brother's neck. She was trying to comfort him, whispering something to him, and doing all she could to keep him from whimpering again. At the same time, her large dark eyes, which looked larger still from the thinness of her frightened face, were watching her mother with alarm. Marmeladov did not enter the door, but dropped on his knees in the very doorway, pushing Raskolnikov in front of him. The woman, seeing a stranger, stopped indifferently facing him, coming to herself for a moment and apparently deciding what he had come for. But evidently she decided that he was going into the next room, as he had to pass through hers to get there. Taking no further notice of him, she walked towards the outer door to close it, and uttered a sudden scream on seeing her husband on his knees in the doorway. "Ah!" she cried out in a frenzy. "He has come back! The criminal! The monster! And where is the money? What's in your pocket? Show me! And your clothes are all different. Where are your clothes? Where's the money? Speak!" And she fell to searching him. Marmeladov submissively and obediently held out both arms to facilitate the search. Not a farthing was there. "Where is the money?" she cried. "Mercy on us! Can he have drunk it all? There were 12 silver roubles left in the chest." And in a fury she seized him by the hair and dragged him into the room. Marmeladov seconded her efforts by meekly crawling along on his knees. "And this is a consolation to me. This does not hurt me, but is a positive consolation, honored sir," he called out, shaken to and fro by his hair, and even once striking the ground with his forehead. The child asleep on the floor woke up and began to cry. The boy in the corner, losing all control, began trembling and screaming and rushed to his sister in violent terror, almost in a fit. The eldest girl was shaking like a leaf. "He's drunk it! He's drunk it all!" the poor woman screamed in despair. "And his clothes are gone, and they are hungry, hungry!" And wringing her hands, she pointed to the children. "Oh, accursed life! And you, are you not ashamed?" She pounced all at once upon Raskolnikov. "From the tavern! Have you been drinking with him? You've been drinking with him too! Go away!" The young man was hastening away without uttering a word. The inner door was thrown wide open, and inquisitive faces were peering in at it. Coarse, laughing faces with pipes and cigarettes and heads wearing caps thrust themselves in at the doorway. Further in could be seen figures in dressing gowns flung open, in costumes of unseemly scantiness, some of them with cards in their hands. They were particularly diverted when Marmeladov, dragged about by his hair, shouted that it was a consolation to him. They even began to come into the room. At last a sinister, shrill outcry was heard. This came from Amalia Lipovetsel herself, pushing her way amongst them and trying to restore order after her own fashion, and for the 100th time to frighten the poor woman by ordering her with coarse abuse to clear out of the room the next day. As he went out, Raskolnikov had time to put his hand into his pocket, to snatch up the coppers he had received in exchange for his rouble in the tavern, and to lay them unnoticed on the window. Afterwards, on the stairs, he changed his mind and would have gone back. "What a stupid thing I've done," he thought to himself. "They have Sonia, and I want it myself." But reflecting that it would be impossible to take it back now, and that in any case he would not have taken it, he dismissed it with a wave of his hand, and went back to his lodging. "Sonia wants pomatum, too," he said as he walked along the street, and he laughed malignantly. "Such smartness costs money. And maybe Sonia herself will be bankrupt today, for there is always a risk, hunting big game, digging for gold. Then they would all be without a crust tomorrow except for my money. Hurrah for Sonia! What a mine they've dug there, and they're making the most of it. Yes, they are making the most of it. They've wept over it and grown used to it. Man grows used to everything, the scoundrel." He sank into thought. "And what if I'm wrong?" he cried suddenly after a moment's thought. "What if man is not really a scoundrel? Man in general, I mean. The whole race of mankind. Then all the rest is prejudice. Simply artificial terrors, and there are no barriers, and it's all as it should be."